This is how to read Jin Ping Mei. Chapter 1. Simon Kinger marries 10 brothers, and Wu Erlang gives a cold treatment to his brother and sister-in-law from the storybook. Wu Song fights a tiger in Jingyang Gang. Pan Jinlian suspects her husband of being a philanderer. 1. The protagonist makes a shining appearance. It is said that during the Zhang reign of Emperor Hizong of the Great Song Dynasty, there was a romantic young man in Qing County, Dongbing Prefecture, Shandong Province. Once upon a time, there was a person. The plum in the golden ping starts the story from here in the most calm way. There is a romantic young man, Heiha's good looks. He was born with a tall appearance, a handsome temperament, and was 26 or 17 years old. There is also talent. I don't study much. I wander around all day long. I focus on sleeping outside in flowers and willows, stirring up grass and wind. I also learn some good boxing and sticks, and I know how to gamble, Chuanglu chess, and Taoist characters. He's rich. He has several fortunes, and he runs a large herbal medicine shop in front of Qing County. He now lives in a house with 5 rooms and 7 entrances. There are slaves and maids in the house, and there are many mules and horses. He may not be very wealthy, but he is also a well-to-do family in Qing County. There is also power. He was born with a strong temperament, a cunning plan for doing things, and he also paid off official debts. Even the treacherous officials in the court, Gao, Yang, Tong, and Kai, had connections with him. Therefore, he specialized in handling official affairs in the county. It's too easy to argue with others, so everyone in the county is afraid of him. Please remember that this is a Simon King who has nothing to do with water margin. Jin Ping Mei redefined a unique origin for him. This new Simon King, who has both wealth and appearance, ruthless work, and omnipotence in the world, is definitely not something Wu Song can easily kill. He will accompany us throughout the entire story. Please remember that this is an evil, adulterous person full of market taste. He and Pan Jinlian brought the original sin of Eden inherent in water margin and determined the original tone of the novel, sex. No hesitation for sex. He committed a crime. He also started his career due to sex, and went from being extremely wealthy to being extremely powerful. Behind the scenes was also a bloody and sinful journey. Please remember that this is still a bad guy full of humane feelings. The author of Jin Ping Mei uses the same writing style as historical records to not only portray an evil Simon King, but also uses countless vivid details to let us see his inferiority and pain, warmth, loneliness. This is a strong man full of human weaknesses. An ordinary person who is also entangled in life and death, love and desire. A good novel is by no means a note of the customs of the times, but a complete fable of life. Deep in the story, Jin Ping Mei hopes to describe such an existence through Simon King, highly symbolized market desire. The 3/3 of the world competing for the throne is just a distant and illusory dream of an emperor. The heroes who gather in the water margin to steal the rivers and lakes are just an unattainable heroic dream. Only the plum in the golden vase is a real story of wine, sex, wealth, prosperity, and the immortal Simon King's wife and concubine. A group of people, rich enough to rival the country, able to call the wind and rain, do whatever he wants. He is exactly the kind of winner in life that the market yearns for. However, the tragedy of Jin Ping Mei is exactly the same. No matter how much money, no matter how big the official, no matter how invincible the power, they can't stop the coming of death. Readers see Simon King's rise to prominence step by step, but he is also cooked in the flames of desire and cooked in the flames of education, step by step, until finally the ores are turned into ashes, destroying his entire life with his own hands. At this moment, justice or evil doesn't matter at all. The irresistible death and unrepeatable life choices look like a hopeless tragedy. The protagonists of most novels lead a virtuous life, but the plum in the golden vase does the opposite. Simon King is the spokesperson for the evil life experience. Perhaps his existence is to answer the common people's unwillingness to live. What kind of life will I have if I am thick-faced and extremely shameless? 2. Version issues you have to know. The first scene ranged for Simon King and Jin Ping Mei as Simon King's 10 brothers are reunited, but I have to wait a moment, because some readers must be confused. Why is the first chapter of The Plum and the Golden Vase I Have Simon Kinger and the 10 Brothers? There is even the first episode of Jin Ping Mei that is Jing Yang Gang Wusong Fights the Tiger. This involves the version issue of Jin Ping Mei that we have to know. Frankly speaking, I really hate talking about versions. For example, a certain Red scholar said that it would take 10 years to figure out the relationship between the various versions of A Dream of Red Mansions. 10 years, why not do something more meaningful? It would also be a good idea if studying the version can solve the problem of eating. However, the basic knowledge of the Jin Ping Mei version introduced here cannot earn royalties. However, I have to explain it clearly at the first time, because this is not only related to how readers the issue of choosing the reading text of Jin Ping Mei is also related to the basic interpretation of the entire story of Jin Ping Mei. So, what is the situation with our version of Jin Ping Mei? Strictly speaking, editions should refer to various manuscripts, engravings, and printed editions, but these are almost meaningless to ordinary readers. Therefore, the editions emphasized in this book actually referred to the two relatively independent text systems of Jin Ping Mei itself. The first is the Jin Ping Mei Chihua system, which is commonly known as the Chihua script. The first chapter writes Wusong Fights the Tiger and Jing Yang Yang, the notebook discovered in Shaanxi in the 1930s, as well as the famous Japanese Oyasu edition. Both belong to this system. The second is the system of new engraved embroidered portraits criticizing the Jin Ping Mei, because it contains 200 pairs of illustrations. It is also commonly known as the Embroidered Portraits book. The first chapter is titled Simon Kinger's 10 Brothers. The Embroidered Portrait edition originally contained some comments. Later, Zhang Zhupo made in-depth comments on this basis, forming the widely circulated The No. One Wonderful Book criticized by Gao He Tang, commonly known as Zhang's Commentary edition. Zhang's commentary made some detailed changes to the original text. For example, the title of the first chapter was changed to Simon Kinger and the 10 Brothers. According to the mainstream view in the current academic circle, the original Yuan version of Jin Ping Mei may be closer to the Chihuahuan system. In the process of continuous copying, engraving, and dissemination, a side branch emerged, the embroidered image version system, modified and commented by literati, and finally formed the first strange book reviewed and compiled by Zhang Zhupo. In the modern publishing industry, after in-depth collation by experts and scholars, the embroidered portrait edition and the Zhang commentary edition are basically integrated into one, so this book does not make detailed distinctions. From a systematic perspective, they are all called the Embroidered Portrait Edition. From the basic story point of view, the plot of the embroidered novel are basically the same. However, reading the novel is not simply listening to the story. From the perspective of literary appreciation, there are huge differences between the embroidered version of Jin Ping Mei and the embroidered version of Jin Ping Mei. The differences are so different that they are simply two different novels. Before entering the formal text analysis, we need to give a general introduction to the differences between the two. First, the answers to the questions are different. This is obvious. There are 100 chapters in the story of Jin Ping Mei, and there are only more than 10 chapters with the same title in the two texts. The chapter is the essence of a chapter book. In this function, the embroidered picture book is obviously better than the word script book. It not only shows the core content of the chapter story, but also more thoroughly expresses the deep connotation of the author. This book will be used in many chapters. Expand analysis. Second, the poems before Hua Jin are different. Generally speaking, the content of the poems in the storybook are mainly exhortations and have little to do with the story itself. In the portrait book, poems are deliberately selected to fit the theme or character creation of the story, making them extremely vivid. That is to say, when we read the poetry version, we can almost directly skip the chapter verses and the poems before the verses. While when reading the Shukshu version, we need to fully appreciate the relationship between the verses and the poems and the main text. Third, the review content of the main text is different. The first chapter of the storybook begins with Wusong's fight against the tiger, as if it were cut out of water margin, and continues with a new story. while the portrait book, by reconstructing the beginning, consciously introduces the protagonist Simon King and its social network, is outlined and explained in detail, paving the way for the following articles. In comparison, we can not only see the determination of the embroidered portrait version to separate from water margin, but also its profound literary consciousness. In addition, the systems of chapters 53, 54, and 84 are also different, which will be discussed in detail later. Fourth, the situation of quoting lyrics and music is different. There are a large number of popular opera texts in the main text of Chihuahuan. For researchers, this is rare folklore material. However, for ordinary readers, the contents of many Chihuahuan are really too long. From the artistic point of view of the novel, Zuzu has wisely deleted most of the irrelevant lyrics and music, so that almost all of the remaining lyrics and music, even just a title, are closely related to the plot of the story. Fifth, the language styles are different. The Chihua version has many shortcomings in the text narrative, and even contradicts itself. The embroidery version tries its best to modify the details to make the overall text more regular and elegant. For example, the poem version is more like a village girl in rough clothes and disheveled hair, not concealing the national beauty. The embroidery version is more like a well-groomed young lady, graceful and luxurious. Sixth, the connotations and themes of the whole book are different. This is shown by the wedge at the beginning of the novel. The wedge is a common structure in classical novels. The wedges in both the poetry version and the portrait version start with wine, sex and wealth, and express allegorical admonitions, but the portrait version actually goes further. After repeatedly tempering the theme of desire led by money and sex, a more profound theme was thrown out. There is never anything that can be seen through. What should Ito? The same story, with this question. The embroidered portrait is 100 times better than the word script. The Diamond Sutra calls it like a bubble in a dream, like lightning and like dew. Faced with endless wealth and sex, life and death change in an instant. How do we get rid of the control of desire on life? How do we get rid of life's fear of death? This realizes the ultimate torture of literary stories to the philosophy of life. After understanding the above, I think it should not be difficult for readers to decide which version of Jin Ping Mei should be read first. If we look at the story from the perspective of literature rather than literary history, historiography, philology, folklore, or even other perspectives. If we care more about the structure, character, image creation, language, action, psychological description, and even ideological connotation of the novel, if these are the things that literature really cares about, then I would recommend the embroidery book without hesitation. Of course, the above-mentioned differences between the Xinhua book and the Xinhua book are essentially of great significance for understanding the Xinhua book and the interest of the novel. Therefore, I recommend that beginners read the Xinhua book first, and then read the Chihua book if they are interested in further research. Similarly, for ordinary readers, photocopies that have not been sorted and proofread are almost meaningless, because the parts revised by experts are all obvious errors retained by the copying and printing of the book itself, even though they are original. I am not opposed to amateurs independently joining the ranks of advanced research, but I prefer that research work can be based on in-depth exploration and interpretation of texts. 3. The Women of Simon's Family. Now we are about to officially enter the story of Jin Ping Mei. Where to start? Look at the embroidery book. There is nothing more important in Jin Ping Mei than the women of the Simon family. The beginning of Wu Song fights the tiger is abandoned. The rewriter of the portrait version introduces them to the readers immediately, so we can also see the original story of the Simon family. Territory, a territory where wives and concubines compete for favor. The battle for favor is an important concept in this book. It is the entire stage to show the story of Simon's harem. As the composition of the harem changes and the power grows and declines, the territory will be upgraded many times. Let's first take a look at the initial favoring territory. Original wife, Chen. He died, leaving behind a daughter, who was betrothed to Chen Jingji, the son of Chen Hong, the in-law of Admiral Yang, the 8000 strong imperial guard in Tokyo. First wife, Wu Yunyang. the daughter of Wu Qianhu, the left guard of King, 25 or 6 years old. Second bedroom, Li Jier, a prostitute. Third house, Zhuo Dior, a prostitute, poor health and sickly. Others, recruited maids and women, including Sun Zui. What does this map indicate? It shows that Simon Xinqiang. Indeed, there is a paragraph at the beginning describing how Simon King became rich and powerful, but that is just an overview. From the purchase of two prostitutes as concubines, it is obvious that Simon King at this time was indeed just a small businessman with a very low starting point. There is a question that requires special attention here. Wu Yunyang, daughter of 1,000 households, married Simon King as a virgin to fill a house, spending the whole day with two prostitutes? I think it can illustrate at least 2 points. 1. Mr. Wu Qianhu must be worse than a phoenix after landing. How poor must the Wu family be to marry their daughter to a small trader? In the future, if Simon King bribes Kai Jing to get the official position, he will be granted 1,000 households, which is equivalent to the 5th rank, several levels higher than the local chief executive, the 7th rank county magistrate. Second, Wu Yunyang must have a very strong sense of superiority in her heart. How could a daughter from 1,000 households bother to compete with a prostitute for favor? Therefore, the rewriter of the portrait version gave her a judgment: nature is virtuous, and her husband is obedient. Because Wu Yunyang does not officially appear until the 9th chapter in the Qihua book. This sentence is actually an original creation of the Xihua book. However, once we read through the whole book, we will find that Wu Yunyang appears to be very vulgar and dull, compared to the later 3 concubines of Meng Yulu, Pan Jinlian, and Li Ping'er. On the other hand, comparing with Zhang Jupo's criticism, we will find that Wu Yunyang is the only evil moon mother was deeply impressed, because he repeatedly pointed out the depth behind Wu Yunyang's apparent dullness, especially her depth and sophistication when it came to major matters, such as money, power. So, how to understand the comment about the embroidered portrait book? This book often uses the textual mutual corroboration method when analyzing and arguing, that is, using the story that actually happened in the text as a basis to infer the profound connotation behind the text. Next, let's take a look at the 2 details of the embroidered portrait that were originally tailor-made for Wu Yunyang. 1. When Simon King talked about marrying 10 brothers, Wu Yunyang used Zhuo Dior's poor health as an excuse to persuade him to eat less alcohol. She even tricked Simon King into going home on the wedding day because Zhuo Dior was fainting. Second, when Simon King collected the sworn money from the 10 brothers one day and handed it to Wu Yunyang to visit Zhuo Dior, Wu Yunyang immediately blamed the poor quality of the silver and pulled him out of Zhuo Dior's room. Simon King also complained about this. Why didn't you say it in the first place? You said you had something to say as soon as I arrived in her room. Obviously, if detail 1 still contains some white lies, detail 2 easily bursts the bubble of lies. It can be seen from this that the words virtuous and virtuous in the embroidery version clearly mean there is no 300 taels of silver here. The rewriter secretly used an implicit contradiction to reveal Wu Yunyang's unique existence. Therefore, I will first draw a conclusion about Wu Yunyang that is applicable to the whole book of Jin Ping Mei. What Wu Yunyang cares about most is her status as the head wife. As long as she is the eldest, it doesn't matter how many concubines or favors she has. In order to ensure the status of the boss, she can be virtuous by nature or submissive in appearance. She can defend, counterattack, and even take the initiative to attack. It is this natural attribute that determines the entire direction of the Simon family's harem competition for favor. And starting from this boss, let's extend it to the bosses and leading brothers in other novels, Song Zhang, Liu Bei, and Tang Seng, as well as Liu Bang and Zhu Yuanzhang in history. Do they have any common characteristics? Yes. They all look like Wu Yunyang. I am not good at writing essays. I am not good at martial arts. I am not a hero. I am not a genius. I am not even good at relying on my face to make a living. However, they have a unique set of skills that ultimately helped them successfully ascend to the boss position and secure the boss position. At this point, everyone understands that this unique set of skills is politics. China's politics has always been based on Confucianism at the outside and law at the core, with a thick face and a sinister heart. When speaking on the surface, it is not self-interested and only benefits others, with high style and high realm. 4. 10 Hot Brothers. As mentioned before, Simon Kinger's 10 Brothers is an original beginning for the embroidered version of the plum in the golden vase. So is this new beginning good? Let's first take a look at what the 10 Brothers of Hot Knot are. The embroidered portrait version advances the introduction of the brothers in the meeting to the beginning of the story, which does not appear until the 10th chapter in the storybook. Obviously, compared to Simon King, these brothers who will become sworn brothers in name are even more miserable and have little use except for prostitution and drinking. However, what's interesting is that the idea of sworn alliance was actually Simon King's own idea. Brothers seem to come and go, but they're just drinking and playing, without any real purpose. It is better too. Sworn brothers. In the end, we support each other every day and have someone to rely on. For Earl Ying and others who have been following drinking and playing, no matter whether you recognize me as a sworn brother in the future, at least today I had a meal in vain. Why not? For example, Wu Yunyang said, "I'm afraid you will have to rely on others in the future. If you want to rely on others, carry a puppet to the theater. You will lose a breath." Becoming a brother is just giving more to others. It's just an excuse to eat and drink. However, Simon King's logic is unique. Being relied on by others for a long time does not mean that our family is in a good situation. Because of this, we saw the whole process of sworn worship. 1. Each person made a symbolic contribution, and Simon King made up for the deficiencies. The Jade Emperor Temple was selected as the place of sworn worship. 2. Then invite Huizixu to join the meeting. 3. Perform sworn obeisance rituals at the Jade Emperor Temple. Burn paper, write essays, read essays, and worship gods. The 10 brothers make 8 vows to each other. At this point, the ceremony is considered completed and you can celebrate with a big meal and drink. Kind of boring, right? These 10 brothers neither died in the same year, month, and day on the same day, nor did they swear together to carry guns and fight for the revolution. Isn't this sworn just for the sake of fame? What's more, after when Simon King was promoted and made a fortune, and became colleagues with many high-ranking officials in the imperial court, he didn't even bother to mention it, not to mention that he refused to be relied by these idiots again. In other words, from the perspective of the whole book, the concept of 10 brothers is of little value. Not only does Simon King not regard them as brothers, the author never regards them as brothers. So, why did the rewriter of the portrait version bother to write the whole story about sworn worship? Let's look at the title of this episode first. The original version of the story, Wu Song fights a tiger in Jingyangang, and Pan Jinlian suspects her husband of being a philanderer. Embroidered portrait book. Simon Kinger marries 10 brothers. Wu Erlang treats his brother and sister-in-law coldly. The title of the storybook is vulgar, right? 8 characters versus 7 characters. It's a bit surprising. Where's the embroidery book? The contrast between hot and cold expresses the inner tension of the whole story with a clear attitude. A warm knot versus a cold reception. The knot is an active knot, and the encounter is a passive encounter. Because of wealth, the knot is lively, and because of poverty, the encounter is deserted. Simon King versus Wu Erlang. Simon King is the protagonist of The Golden Lotus, and Wu Erlang is the protagonist of Water Margin. They contrast and juxtapose the stories shared by the 2 texts in a natural manner. If the storybook is just borrowing a pen from Water Margin to make things happen, then the portrait book has completely determined its own literary goals and has an independent self. The relationship between the 10 brothers and Simon King was hidden in wealth, and the relationship between the brother and sister-in-law and Wu Erlang was hidden in color. Because of wealth, the 10 brothers were still passionate when Simon King died, but there was an love in it. Coldness. Because of sex, Pan Jinlian's brother and sister-in-law were even colder when they died, but there was a flame of revenge in them. From 10 brothers to brothers and sisters-in-law, from warm friendship to cold treatment, there are really indescribable changes in the world. It can be seen that although the sworn vows of 10 brothers itself is not very interesting, it forms an appropriate contrast to the subsequent story of Takejiro's cold encounter with his brother and sister-in-law. Let's look at the place of sworn worship. The arrangement of the sworn place of the 10 brothers in the Jade Emperor Temple in the embroidery version is equally meaningful. Because the last story took place in Yangfu Temple, after this change, the story begins at Jade Emperor Temple and ends at Yangfu Temple. Judging from the whole book, the Jade Emperor Temple is related to the life of the Ximen family, including Ximen King's sworn vows, promotion, and Ximen Guan's name for blessing. While Yangfu Temple is related to the death of the Ximen family, with Pan Jinlian and Chen Jingji both buried there. Finally, Zen Master Pujing recommended all the souls there. From this, the confrontation between the two peaks of the Jade Emperor Temple and the Yangfu Temple has become the overall concept of the embroidered version of Jin Ping Mei. Third, look at the sparse words of sworn worship. Fu is Taoyuan's righteousness, and everyone admires him and dares to emulate his style. Guanbao has a deep affection, and all surnames pursue Wei and want to share his aspiration. Besides, we can be brothers from all over the world. How can we not be as good as flesh and blood if we have different surnames? Hey, everyone knows that the three kingdoms began with the three sworn brothers in Taoyuan, and the water margin began with the ranking of heroes. The rewriter of the portrait version clearly wants to create trouble for the common people who love classical heroism, who said loyalty is the most important thing among heroes. I want to tell you that behind these nonsense in the name of loyalty are all selfishness, betrayal, and ingratitude. This is completely in line with the cynicism in the core text of Jin Ping Mei. It is even the unique modification of the sworn brothers that makes the story of Jin Ping Mei truly rival the Three Kingdoms and water margin in both literary and social senses. Come on, this is a real market story. 5. Li Ping'er and Hua Zixu. Another important function of sworn brothers is to take the opportunity to make Li Ping'er appear in advance. The rewriters of the portrait version probably thought that it was too unfair for the second heroine to debut more than 10 episodes later. However, how can the wife of the Hua family next door directly connect with the high-ranking officials in Ximen? Of course, this requires the help of Hua Zixu. Because it turned out that his friend Bushidao Zixu's story is unknown, I have to tell you, I don't know. Died, so Hua Zixu was lucky to be recommended by Earl Ying and recruited him to make up the number of 10 brothers. So Ximen King posted an invitation. Hua Zixu agreed and came. And the sworn ceremony was in full swing. Everything seems to be smooth, but the reality is turbulent and full of mysteries. Let us carefully recall what Ximen King said when he asked Diane to post the invitation. Tell your second father Hua this and that. If your second father is not at home, just tell his second mother. When Dan came back to report, he said, his second father is not at home, so I told his second mother. After hearing this, the second mother was very happy and said, since your father Ximen takes your second father as a brother, what's wrong with him? He's here. I'll tell him when he comes home, and I'll definitely encourage him to come and pay homage to me more often, based on common sense. Even if Ximen King didn't specifically say Tellernying, there would be no flaw in Dan's reply. Even if he even said it, it would feel redundant. So the key lies in Ximen King's following sentence. This second brother Hua is a smart and beautiful lady. Regardless of whether he is treacherous or not, there is no doubt that Ximen King is drooling over Li Ping'er. Moreover, from Ximen King's tedious request to Dan to Tellernying, we can see that he had already expected that Li Ping'er would definitely agree. And she would directly make the decision and agree. And would also spur Hua Zixu to come and pay homage. Li Ping'er. This original background can actually be compared with Pan Jinlian's experience in the second half. There is another question here, right? You must know that Hua Zixu and his wife have inherited the inheritance of their eunuch uncle who is as rich as the prefecture and county. And Ximen King is just a small owner of a herbal medicine shop. Why does Li Ping'er, who is still in the boudoir, think that the Hua family is relying on Ximen King? Is it a good thing? Erlian gave the answer to this point during the sworn vows. At this time of year, we have no choice but to talk about our wealth and status. There is no better way to talk about our age. A high-ranking official is powerful and virtuous, and all brothers will obey you. Here are several necessary conditions for ranking seats: wealth, power, prestige, and virtue. This makes sense. Habao Yi Songjiang also has these conditions. So, can Hua Zixu compare with Simon Singh? Virtue is probably righteousness of the market. If we went to war in Tarrant, Simon King's hold Havenden. In terms of wealth, it is so the Austafitarix dia, but the size a double-edged sword. If you sight well, you will be invincible. But if you sight early, you will be guilty. In terms of war dunk, that wow rare glaffanty. However, Simon King wasab abuntutionishan, while wasik sequoli entusen, which was almost equontal. Prestica schuldenderd, and the theka wordly in Tarantis, Erling New Wallers, soin thranking Goffert, Erling and Sixtrarend, while wasik secoldly. Similarly, Leipinger, Huawaskita Human, Elsik Nuit, so Shenatonly Wasterventi, Porthiel so consideri. It chart total was Teririt ers cleverness ordi. In West this warns Darren Tree's life with Xmenfli. 6. Hoys Erling, who is the second Erling, Hido Esamenkavisi, Han was original of Fantanez. He lost the Scapitoldend, Ha special as Edintiffen, Sopiopolanic Naziami, he was Selsavrianchi, Chuangla Chespieces. Everything is content. He helps prestigious shoutouts that there's a coquism. So how bad is it? Check out the Zapier. Wearing Ganosh when does when a ho show a show a zoo a zoo a zoo a zoo a zoo a have no other crepability entities. Silk show san puriskoskin, high sedinga thought. What is san well met? Idris proba blientendi, or a decoration membran. What does it me antle? Is it understand of laugh? What are silkshes cons? Else phases and metallistants, right? It must bequita for foundation soap soft and worn by 5 grandies. So Casamankinglert, right? Judging the book by time pape, these a few word Chalefis sterilil lost this capital, but Pioplerialigent, Erlingus Borandes, but to be fair, high silver idoled, moreover, in Waspers Sicilifacientis. In this chapter, their writer of a Feltoctory original plot, trying his best Relefistrias. On this day, Erling Camata Fafisma Menenens, Ball Twevitable of Alefictir, his level of Fumabishantian, Ben Canevandera Leffels, and discerned the Fafoshan to Theenst store of Twankard. According to the Fuldarted, I does not necessarily quertati, ween lie record the Theophantant, is or lying wallisting. Simon Kinjin asked, have you et knee, brother, Tritigus, Uterido edit? It's impossibletoges, WHATA weird ... if you don single quotes TW and tweet, you just say you aventane. How can you best sort on? Heckalet the boy, here comes Thiefud. Let's eat with Myandend, otherwise, we've already in. When Hards a Methan Torrenton, was Midas Wellgone Tours, a brilliant leany of Aliaja, isn't it? Early in Kamamatellatif, Butif heater eclatod. Wouldn't it be addict or second uncle? Sotherwasig likens were, Utri Tagus. It's natural to say if I of, Bother Wilbafiafi Affiantiza, Simon King della Bentridi Aguasayovanishented. I furly in Gansword no, I didn't eat. It would be a loss fake. Obviously, ha had a more interpreting tea. You can guess, Simon Kik natural ateric dinkle. So he generously vivi tefimimit. I furling grudged it will be just Eric stare, but it was dilshams. Erlinging wasapor, Febointisher, other was Zualetti. I won't eat 8 years. It's a rare thing. Let me tell you. I main like caribou too. I want me brother o golden. Let's go finderetionary. It is no DC to levank. Buta de CC to la granting ing. People are guard for boides, and it is no shasaishi kuik. Erling Scholchawid in vain. The embroidery obligations truly explain the and Torin tentizes earlying in the first place. From Ying Basin to Yingju, the homophonic naming method has profoundly influenced many later novels, including A Dream of Red Mansions. However, Yingju's strange helper image is unique in the history of literature. He perfectly interprets the officialdom. What kind of intermediary should be used between the market and the market? His story will be analyzed in depth many times later in this book. 7. The Immortal Heroine. From the fake tiger during the sworn ceremony to the real tiger in Jingyang Yang. From the tiger harming people to watching the hero who fights the tiger, Simon King was lured to the restaurant by Count Ying's god-like cooking skills, and thus contacted Wu Song and the Wu Da family. You say that this kind of person, if he doesn't have the strength of 1,000 kilograms of buffalo, how can he touch him? It was this shocking look that laid the foundation for Simon King's hasty escape in the future when Wu Song's Shizi took revenge. It was this look of inferiority that saved Simon King's life and allowed him to live for many more years in the story of Jin Ping Mei. Wu Song returns, and the story of Water Margin begins. This is a fragment that is familiar to every reader who is familiar with the story of Water Margin. Therefore, we should return the wonderful things that belong to Water Margin to Water Margin. We only study Jin Ping Mei, especially the original and wonderful embroidered version of Jin Ping Mei. Next, the #1 heroine Pan Jinlian finally appears. This is Pan Jinlian, who belongs to Jin Ping Mei. She is not the harlot that everyone hates in Water Margin, but a charming woman with father and mother, flesh and blood, feelings and self. From Water Margin to Jin Ping Mei, Pan Jinlian completed a historic leap in the history of literature and became an immortal legend. Let's first look at Pan Jinlian's life experience set in the Golden Lotus. Like Simon King, this is a new rule of the game. These innate factors and living environment are an important basis for our understanding of roles and personalities in the future. This Pan Jinlian is the daughter of Tailor Pan outside the South Gate, the sixth sister, because he was quite handsome since he was a child and had a pair of nice little feet. He was named Jinlian. His father died, and the mother could not survive. He was sold to Wang Zhaoxuan's house at the age of 9, where he learned to play and sing, and often taught him to read and write in his spare time. He was very clever by nature, and when he was only 12 or 13, he could draw eyebrows, apply powder and ink, taste bamboo and string silk, and work with needlework. Knew how to read and write, wore a bun and a button-down shirt, and looked very different. When he was 15 years old, Wang Zhaoxuan died, and Pan's mother fought for him to come out, giving her 30 taels of silver. He was resold to Zhang Dahu's family. He grew up to be 18 years old. His fair face was lined with peach blossoms, and his eyebrows were crescent-shaped. Zhang Dahu secretly called Jin Lian to his room and kept it. From this resume we can read at least the following. 1. If Pan Jinlian's father had not died young, she might have had a happy and ordinary life. Of course, there would not have been such a wonderful woman who was as versatile and beautiful as a beauty. 2. She was sold into the Wang Zhaoxuan mansion at the age of 9. In this mansion, which produced characters such as Mrs. Lin and Wang Sangwan, she spent 6 years studying as a young Jothan horse and became pathologically precocious. At the age of 12 or 13, paint on the eyebrows, apply powder and vermilion, and comb a bun into a bun, making it look elegant according to etiquette. In ancient times, a woman did not comb her hair into a bun until she was 15 years old, which is called a hairpin, which corresponds to a weak crown for a man in his 20s. 3. When Wang Zhaoxuan died, Wang Sangwan was only a few years old when he died. This information will be valuable later. She was resold to Zhang Da's family. Because she was a talented girl, she had more attractive capital and her social status increased. 4. If the memory of Wang Zhaoxuan's mansion is unpleasant, then Zhang Da's family is simply a nightmare in life for Pan Jinlian. Although 18 years old is not a very early age, after all, the old Zhang Dahu took away her virginity unconditionally. Pan Jinlian lost her virginity in the form of taking it. Su Yang is a special word used by the master to possess the slave's sex, as is the case with Yingxun and Chunmai in the following text. The most important feature of the concubine is that it is only for the master's use and cannot bring any form of benefit to the slave. That is to say, they unconditionally lose their virginity to the master, but cannot get into the position of concubines such as Sun Zui, and they cannot get economic benefits. Compared with servant wives like Song Huilian and sister-in-law Bai who committed adultery with masters like Simon King, and prostitutes like Sister Li Gui who were groomed by clients like Simon King, they are all very different. Of course, Chunmai is a special case because she is lucky and has a good life in exchange for her income. Pan Jinlian can only be an unforgettable tragedy. She was kicked out of the house by her mistress and married to Wu Daling, a weak and vulgar dwarf. However, even so, fate continues to play tricks on her, and Zhang Da, who still indirectly possesses her. Perhaps, from a modern perspective, this can be understood and sympathized with. In Water Margin, Pan Jinlian's marriage to Wu Daling was Zhang Da, whose revenge for her disobedience, of course. This background of Water Margin and his comments about Pan Jinlian, such as the leader loves to steal men, will never be able to exist. The self-justifying contradiction, which is very bad in this regard, is well remedied in Jin Ping Mei. However, in Jin Ping Mei, marrying Wu Daling becomes a compromise with reality. Later, she once said to Wuhan University, "If you divorce me, you can keep him to yourself." This obviously means that she does not want Wuhan University to give her a divorce letter. If she divorces, I really can't think of where she can go except for a brothel or being sold. So even though the two people seemed to be extremely incompatible, they had no choice but to make do in reality. So even though Wu Daling was vulgar, Pan Jinlian was willing to take out the treasures and jewelry she had painstakingly hidden, to buy a house somewhere between buying and renting, owning the property rights of the house, no land rights. So although Pan Jinlian was eating melon seeds under the window to show off her golden lotuses in the sun, she finally chose to restrain herself in the face of time and find a quiet place to live her life in peace. This may be the meaning of the bottom. Only people at the bottom can understand the helpless joy and suffering, and understand why Pan Jinlian will desperately seize the opportunity to seduce or actively be seduced by the men she likes. 8. Cold reception from brothers. The first man Pan Jinlian fell in love with was the tiger fighting hero Wu Song. The first one means that this is her first love, and first love means that she can never forget her original intention even in the vicissitudes of life. It was the sorrow of being sold back and forth, the pain of being exploited and humiliated, and the depression of her dwarf husband that made her see the exit of her soul in an instant and completely open her heart, but it planted the seeds of eternal tragedy. Wu Song went home. It is said in Jin Ping Mei that Wu Song recuperated at Chai Jin's house before fighting the tiger. After recovering from his illness, he was ready to return to his hometown to find his brother. He did not have a home, but his dwarf brother did. He probably had to earn a living, but by some strange combination of circumstances, Jing Yang earned a job hunting tigers. So there was probably no need to go to his brother's house to earn a living. So he stopped looking. If he didn't look for him, Wuhan University wouldn't be able to care about him, so they had to meet by chance, a cold encounter. That day, Wu Song was wandering on the street when he heard someone shouting from behind. "Brother, the county magistrate has promoted you to be the head of the patrol. Why don't you look after me?" Brothers are overjoyed to see each other. Then, Wu Da took Wu Song home, and his uncle and sister-in-law recognized each other. "Theon, who killed the big bug in Jingyang the day before yesterday, was your brother-in-law. Today, he is the head of the capital. He is my brother from the same mother. Did you see the clues?" Obviously, these two sentences were said with tutu in mind. This is Wu Daling himself from the plum and the golden ping. At this point, Wu Song and Pan Jinlian met. Let's review the story flow set in Water Margin. First, Pan Jinlian took the initiative to tease Wu Song, but Wu Song refused. Then Pan Jinlian poisoned Wu Da, and Wu Song took revenge and killed Pan Jinlian. We have always been accustomed to believe that Wu Song is a hero and the embodiment of justice. Pan Jinlian is an adulteress who deserves evil retribution. However, when we read Jin Ping Mei carefully, we will find that the taste has secretly changed. The hero is no longer a pure hero, and the prostitute is not a completely despised prostitute. At that time, the uncle and sister-in-law met each other and saluted each other. The two gave way to each other for a while, and they both kowtowed. After a while, the youngest daughter Yinger in Water Margin Yinger is the name of another prostitute Pan Kyo Yoon's slave Jin Ping Mei added a daughter to Wu Da out of thin air took tea, and the two ate. Wu Song saw that the woman was very enchanting, so he just lowered his head. What does it mean? At this time, Pan Jinlian didn't express anything at all. But this head lowered was Wu Song's first reaction. He's his sister-in-law. And in his heart is probably a sexy and enchanting beauty, right? This is a visual experience and psychological reaction that everyone has personal experience with. If he is thinking of his eldest sister-in-law as his mother, then a gentleman should be magnanimous and look straight at him. The reason for head lowered is because of shyness and fear. Fear of the other person's enchanting figure, fear of the other person's charming eyes, and even more of himself. Maybe my heart is already in turmoil. Of course, there will always be people who say that given the logic of the story, Pan Jinlian is still at fault. Wu Song was just a little guilty, but Pan Jinlian took the initiative, laughing under the crowd, calling him uncle, looking only at Wu Song, until Wu Song was embarrassed again and fell down head. As mentioned before, Pan Jinlian's life experience provides her with a reason worthy of exculpation. Because of poverty, he was sold back and forth. Because of being sold, his fate became more miserable every time. It was this tragic fate that forced her to form a clear self and strong self-esteem. She discovered, cherished and prided herself on her beauty. As she gradually grew up, she exuded infinite youthful charm and wild original passion. Compared with Zhang Dahu's old age and Wu Daling's ugliness, she yearned too much for Kong Wu's powerful real man. Compared with the life without a way out and the future without dawn, she too eagerly looked forward to the hero. The rebellious hero who dared to challenge social morality. Saved.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.